Oh, hey there. How's it going? I bet you just got a stealth rack from GOBI and you need some guidance on installing. Well, have no fear because I'm gonna do the best I can to help you out. Stay tuned. My name is Austin Swan, otherwise known as Swan's Bronco on Instagram and YouTube. This took me about 5 hours to install and there was no video on it. So I'm hoping that this video at least helps you out a little bit and helps speed up the process. So let's get to it. So the very first step includes basically remove the painted piece and the plastic base plate, put down your mounting bracket, and then put the plastic base plate over that. You reuse the bolts that were on there and then put your plastic pieces back over that. And then you attach the L bracket looking piece to that, and you want to make sure they're both facing inwards. Moving on to the next step, I had to remove my ditch lights that I had mounted here. If you don't have ditch lights, you just remove the antenna and the two little accessory bolts. There's one on each side. So for this portion, you would definitely want to use a buddy. So you grab that front windshield portion and bring it up over the hood and set it down where you remove those accessory bolts. Once you do that, you're going to use the provided screws to bolt it back into place. Make sure you have a washer on there as well. But don't tighten it all the way down because you're gonna have a few other portions and you need the wiggle room there. This next step for the upper windshield with that cover, that kind of protective piece that they're telling you to put on there, I had a little bit of an issue on one side. My windshield was too close to the frame, so I did have to bend my base plate just a little bit to make it fit. Once you get those protective plates in up top, you're gonna tighten down the bolts down by the mirrors on each side. Next up, you're gonna be putting on the wear plates that go right up by the driver and passenger window. That kind of, it's like right at where the window and the roof meet. And then once you do that, you're going to add on the other couple wear plates and the silver piece that receives the threaded screws goes behind the windshield bar. The rest of the plates go in front of it. Once you get all three bolts in on one side, the instructions say to use a friend to squeeze the light bar and the other plate together so that it's a nice firm fit, and you'll use your buddy again to tighten down those screws while someone else is squeezing. Next up, we're gonna go back up to the accessory mounts on top of the windshield, and you're gonna add the provided screws and flat washers up top there, screwing those into place as well. Once this is all done, you'll wanna make sure you reinstall your antenna as well. And the instructions do recommend that you try and wiggle the bar as much as you can to make sure that there's no play or movement in there. On the next page, it starts instructing you based on a hard top. Obviously, we don't have a hard top, so we're gonna skip down to the bottom of that page. And this is where you install the protective plates down by the rear fender, right below the soft top itself. And this is just two screws back there. But before you install that plate, you'll want to find the protective, it's basically like paint protection film. And what I actually did to make sure that mine didn't stick out on either side, I recommend you line up the PPF with the plate before you put it on, and then use a razor blade to cut off this extra PPF so that there's nothing hanging out beyond the plate itself. So next, you're gonna put the plate on there, rest it where it belongs, and put some masking tape around there. Then pull the plate off and put the PPF on. And then throw that plate on and bolt it right in. You're good to go. For these next few steps, I did not remove the rear bumper to install these pieces. I would recommend maybe doing it because it might save you a couple minutes or so. So once you finish taking the bumper off, if you choose to do so, you're gonna grab figure E, which is a weird kind of looking bracket, and you wanna make sure it's lined up properly, otherwise you'll have a lot of difficulty in the next couple steps. Also keep in mind that the bracket on one side goes behind the frame, and then towards the tire it goes in front of the frame. Once you find where that piece belongs, you're gonna take a screw and sift it right up the middle of it, kind of towards the spare tire in that corner there. And then you're gonna take figure D and stick it on there and thread a nut on there to hold it in place. This was one of the places that I had a little difficulty with because the bumper was still on. Next, you're gonna take the frame extension plate and two of the real long carriage bolts, and you're basically gonna put this on the other side of the frame so that the two pieces clamp to the frame. I would recommend, once you get one bolt threaded, thread the other one before you tighten either of them down to make sure that you can get both of them on there, because if you do tighten one down first, it's gonna make the other one impossible to get to. Once you get those clamped down, you're going to grab the designated screw set in the instructions and add it to the lower slot on the frame extension on the back side. And I wouldn't tighten it all the way down because the next step says to use a small mallet to make sure that the frame extension is up against the vehicle's frame. Once you're sure that the frame extension is fully against the vehicle's frame, you're going to tighten down all of those screws that you just put in. Next up is Tower D, which is basically going to be the hinge. A few things to note here is that the bracket that you attach to this tower, you want to make sure that the side that you secure to the tower is on the inside rather than the outside. I made that mistake the first time where I put it on the outside and it just doesn't line up right. So then you have to take it off and put it back on. So make sure that the bracket piece is on the inside of the tower. If you take the bumper off, this is super easy. You just kind of place it into place with the frame extension. If you don't take the bumper off, you'll have to slide it in. You'll have to put it in where the rear tire is and then slide it kind of into place and find its spot. You're gonna use 3 bolts here, and before you tighten those fully down, you'll wanna use a level to make sure that the tower is level. Next up, you're gonna go back underneath the Bronco, and that bracket that you attach to Tower D, you're now gonna find where that is and secure it to the frame extension itself. This bolt's gonna be right next to one of the clamps for the frame, so that's one way to look for it. And last but not least, the final bolt is going to be where that weird kind of banana looking bracket attaches to the tower, and you'll tighten those down. And then I would go back around and tighten all of the bolts again, make sure everything's all nice and tight and snug. And then you'll basically do that on the other side and then throw your bumper back on, and we'll move on from there. So the next step is going to instruct you to turn the rack upside down. I would recommend to use the cardboard box that it was shipped in as kind of like a placemat to make sure that you don't scratch it. But basically you're gonna put these driver side and passenger side plates on the frame and make sure that the curved edge lines up with the rack itself. And once you've tightened those 10 bolts down, 5 on each side, you're going to grab your buddy again, and you guys are gonna lift it up and onto the top of the Bronco. I would recommend using the other side of the cardboard box. We ripped it up and put it up top as kind of a protective cover when we set the rack on there. The instructions also recommend the 3-inch spacers that were provided in the box. You can use those to help level the rack out while you install the front pieces. The next step, which is at figure 81, is if you don't have the quick release pieces. If you do have the quick release pieces, you'll want to switch over to that instruction manual to make sure that you do that properly, because figures 81, 82, and 83 don't apply to you if you have the quick release. So for the quick release plates, I had a little bit of difficulties with these, but I'm going to show you a lot of different angles so that you can be sure to have the orientation set up properly. For the instructions, in front of the light bar portion of the rack, you put that angled piece, and that kind of clamps to the other side of the rack where you'll put the other side of the quick release. The instructions are a little bit hard to read, so if you are in this process and you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. I would very happily help you out in any way that I can. We're gonna move on to the rear support bars. I would recommend using a friend for this portion as well, as you kind of have to be on the top and the bottom at the same time. But you grab one side and you'll use the screws provided. I would recommend doing the bottom first. Once you have that tightened down low, you're going to bring in the ladders in and install those as well with the hardware provided. There's 4 bolts for this one, 2 up top and 2 down low. Once you have all 4 bolts tightened down on the ladder, you're going to want to tighten down the isolator screws. As you're doing this, you'll want to pull the bar away from the vehicle until you have about 1.5 inches of space between the isolator screw and the wear plate. Once you've done that, you're basically finished. So for the rooftop tent, my Inspired Overland tent came with 2 different brackets. It came with these square brackets and then a more rounded bracket. Obviously with this rack, it has the bars, so you'll want to use the rounded brackets to mount it to it. So what we did was flip the tent over and figure out where we wanted to put the mounting brackets. And then we added the mounting brackets and the poles to the tent while it was still off the vehicle. And then once we did that, we flipped it over and put it on top of the rack and then tightened it down with the clamps that are provided from GOBI. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope this helped. This rack has been incredible for me. I've tested it off-road, I've slept up in the tent, and it's just been incredible. So I hope you like it as much as I do. And if you have any questions, please reach out to swans.bronco on Instagram, and I would be more than happy to help you out. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.